Good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Closer's Inner Circle podcast, hosted by your partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and together with my co host, Ben Gay III, we are diving into the world of sales mastery with the gem from the Closers Part 2. Now, these books, 1 and 2, the Closers Part 1 and Part 2, are widely known across the globe as the Sales Bibles. And today we are going back into sales infiltration strategies from the Closers Part 2. We're working now on episode 6. And if you're not familiar with Ben Gay III, I'm going to tell you right now, he is renowned as one of the most foremost sales trainers and has left an indelible mark on countless careers and businesses throughout his transformative teachings. In this week's installment of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, we're picking up from where we left off last time in part 5, which was our part 5, not the chapter part 5, but this is the 6th installment. I confused myself. And we will pick up on page 267, where we're going to discuss how you become a sales infiltrator. And listen carefully, everybody. If you don't have your book in front of you, Ben will tell you where to find them so you can add them to your entrepreneurial library. And by the way, do you have questions for us? We love to hear from our audience, and we will answer them on the show. Ben, good morning. Before we get going, can you tell people where to find us and how
Sure,
to send their sales questions to us? And I'm going to give you homework, the link to the Closer series of books.
I can. I'll do all that. Good morning. Happy to be with you again for my favorite part of Wednesdays, and made some notes, and I'm ready to go. The way we teach from the Closers series, most heavily from the Closers Part 2, which is a little closer to reality than some of the hardcore stuff in Part 1 that works wonderfully, but most people don't have the courage to use it. So I found a safer way to explain sophisticated professional selling. So any book we refer to, and soon to be the Closers Part 4 will be in there from Denise Griffitts on podcasting, how to do it, etc. But you go to stores, stores dot ebay.com/Ronzoni Books. That's all one word. It's spelled RONZONE Books, BOOKS, Ronzoni Books. And there you will get special pricing, free shipping, and they bring them to me, so they'll still be signed and dated. And if you order before 2 o'clock on any given day, it'll go out that day. If not, the next business day. We call it sudden service. So you'd be pleasantly surprised not only in the quality of the merchandise, the information that's contained in the Closer series, but the fast shipping and lifetime money back guarantee. Now, if you should be the first or second one in our 40-year history of selling the Closers, the original one on, be the first one to return a book, we will, and take advantage of the lifetime guarantee, we will publicize you constantly. There is a person who was stupid enough to return the
So,
Closers.
so I can't send my book that is falling apart from me really abusing it. I can't send it back to you because you'll abuse me.
Well, you can, but you'll
No, I
be
won't.
abused. It'd be
I'll just,
safer,
I'll
be
tape it.
safer to buy a new one. But I'm with
It's,
you on that. That's how
oh,
you do it. And if you have
okay.
any desire to reach me personally, Denise will give you her information. My email is B as in Ben, F as in Frank, G as in Gay, the numeral 3, BFG3 at DirectCon, short for Direct Connect, DirectCon.net, NET. And there's where the questions are sent to me, is where I get them. And you'll hear, I've got one here in just a minute for you. So that's how you reach me. You want to share your contact information now, Denise?
I'm distressingly easy to find online, and you're welcome to contact me directly toll free. It's the easiest way to reach me. That and my email, but toll free at 888-719-6711. Again, that's 888, excuse me, 719-6711, and leave a message and I will return your call just as soon as possible. And by the way, it's me that calls you back. It's nobody else. It's always going to be me. So Ben, and I have to warn you, we're having, I'm in the deep south and we're in the middle of hurricane season, and summer here is basically what we call the mud season. We get a lot of rain. And my yard crew was just here, and I saw them skedaddling. I'm not even sure they made it all the way through the yards before they had to leave. Pouring down rain, there's a lot of lightning, a lot of thunder.
Hmm.
So if you lose me, it's not because I was bored and just decided I didn't want to do this anymore.
Wasn't anything I said, right?
No, no. It's just gonna be one of those things. The weather here is odd. So anyway, we're both easy to find. So let's talk about the closer. 267 is where I think we decided we were going
Yeah,
to pick up and ask your question or share the question if you would. I haven't heard it yet.
yeah, it's from a gentleman named Henry Cudlip or Cudlip, I think it is. And he's from Atlanta and my old stomping grounds and my emotional hometown. Haven't lived there in many years, but if we meet on a plane, you say, "Where are you from?" I say Atlanta. And then I admit that I've lived in California for 50 years later. I don't bring that up right at the beginning. So anyway, Henry said, I'll paraphrase it because he put it in long form. Would you advise a young person? I'll change that to a person, but he asked young person to go into sales. And people who know what I've been doing for a living for quite some time would assume that I would say, "Oh, absolutely." And Henry, listen up. Not necessarily. It depends. I can teach anyone how to sell effectively and make a good living, but some people aren't built that way. That's not good or bad. They're just different. I have a dear friend who works behind the counter at the post office. Classiest guy you'll ever meet, wonderful person, but he's been there for years. I keep being afraid he's going to announce his retirement one day because he solves all problems that I have with the post office, the few that I have, but all I have to do is go to David and they're handled. David makes over $200,000 a year standing there in a blue shirt, stamping, putting a postmark on stamps and answering questions. And he is, unless he kills the postmaster, he is 100% job secure. So if you're into security, if that's your goal, I would find a job. I'd probably go to work at the post office because I happen to know a little bit about it, and they're always recruiting, and your job is safe. And then if you're security motivated, there are lots of jobs like that. If working on commission, which is really where salespersonship starts, then if that scares you, because one week you may make a bunch of money and the next week you may have made none. And if you're a salesperson, you spent the money you made last week. So this week, it's like you don't exist. If that scares you, then you might want to go into selling or some other job that's secure. And but if you go into selling, you go into salaried selling.
Oh,
Warning, that can be a little scary, but not scary, frustrating, because next to you might be a guy or a girl who elected to go into selling on a commission basis. You're both doing the same work, everything's going along, the same, you're getting the same leads, and you're making, just picking out the numbers out of the air, you're making 75,000 a year, and he or she is making 300,000 a year doing the same thing. The difference is he or she took the risk of making nothing. So that's another way to look at it. But if you're into, you want to make money, you want to meet fascinating people, being on commission doesn't scare you, then and only then would I say yes. going into selling is a wonderful idea. When I went into selling, it was the only thing I was qualified to do. I was raised in a family of salespeople and entrepreneurs, and so everybody I knew, directly, indirectly, related or not related, through my family, everybody was in selling of some sort, and most were not only into selling, they owned their own businesses. So I'll give you a part of the answer you didn't have. Would it be a good idea for a young person to go into selling? Yeah, and own your own business. If psychologically that matches up with you, there's no shame. I had a friend, and I went back to a high school reunion, believe it or not, many years ago, and he he among others came up. I gave a little talk, and he came up afterwards, and he says, I hope you don't mind talking to me. I said, well, I've been talking to you since we were in kindergarten. What's the problem? He said, well, you're doing so well now. I didn't know if you'd be looking down on me or so. I said, no. What do you have a question? What's the deal? And he said, well, I said, what are you doing now? And he said, well, I work out at, this was in Atlanta. I work out at Kraft Foods, and I worked on the mustard, excuse me, the mayonnaise vat for a long time, but I just got promoted over to the mustard vat. And I was sort of struck by, what do you say to that? But I said to him by his first name, what's the advantage of the mustard vat? He was promoted to mustard. He said, it doesn't stick to your paddle. And I thought, now see, there's a different way of looking at success in business.
Yeah, he's
I,
right. You could scoop a spoon of mayonnaise and you're not gonna get it off. Just hand the spoon to the cat. I mean, that's how
yeah,
you're gonna get it off. The mustard just slides right off. And if you add mayonnaise to that, mix it up, add a little, horseradish, dip a French fry in it.
yeah, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, and I've thought about it off and on over the years many times. I flew in a Learjet. We were 5 years out of high school. I think it was 5 years. I was already a millionaire for the first time. That went away and I had to make it back, but I was already a millionaire at the time. Flew in a Learjet, had staff with me since they were in the hotel anyway. They came down I was the only person at the high school reunion with staff. And
Did
I
you wear
w-
a fur cape? I mean, you had an entourage. I need a visual.
So, but that was my vision of, what you ought to be doing 5 years out of high school and be successful. And I met somebody who was thrilled to have been promoted from the mayonnaise vat to the mustard vat because it doesn't stick to your paddle. So we had I didn't try, and although I was in a business where you recruited people all the time, I didn't even try. He was happy. He was secure. He was over at the mustard vat. I guess beyond that is vinegar, because that would keep your paddle clean all the time. He was happy with it and proud of it. And I thought, no, why mess with him and maybe screw up a friendship based on, well, you ought to get in our business and you can get rich and so on. So to Henry, let me just say, I get the point. Selling is exciting. When practiced at a professional level, it's the highest paid job you can get. There might be some, not versus Bill Gates, but I'm talking about job where you're working for a company with somebody else. You can't make more money anywhere than you can make in selling if you're good. And in spite of that, I would say no to lots of people. I'm a social guy. I go out and we meet and go into a restaurant before we leave. I've talked to, kidded with something, 10 or 15 people. Anybody on the aisle to and from our table is fair game. Anybody I know is fair game. And whoever's sitting on either side of them is fair game. Uh, so I'm a people person and a sort of a natural recruiter if I'm so inclined. Everybody's not that way. Some people would throw up in the back of their throat if they thought they had to meet a new person and talk to them. You can get over some of that, but why uh, punish yourself day in and day out? So, if you want to learn how to sell, Henry, get the Closer series if you don't already have it, and let me guide you through the process and show you some shortcuts that'll take years off your learning curve. If the thought of that scares you to death, go do something else. I was talking to a UPS driver who was dropped off something in the house the other day, and they had just had some sort of union thing I'd read about in the paper and got a pretty big raise and so on, and published from this figure to now they were making this figure per hour, per week, per month. And I was thinking, there were times like when they towed away the cars and repossessed our house, foreclosed on our house, uh, 40 years ago. Uh, there were times where a UPS truck would have looked like a real good idea. Because again, if they don't kill the supervisor and make deliveries like they're supposed to every day, how hard can it be? And you're a union member and you make pretty good wages and your job's secure. They don't lay people off at UPS. So that's a long answer to a short question, but
No,
but
it's a
I
great answer.
yeah, I just pointed out because everybody goes, well, you want me to go in selling? I go, no, not necessarily. And
Right,
and
right.
if you're, I have a good friend who's very argumentative. If you say the sky is
What's
blue,
it
well, it's
mean?
not necessarily blue. That's the atmosphere and the stuff in the middle and so on. And if he never has, but if he ever asked me, should I go into selling? I said, no, no, don't do that to yourself.
No, please don't. You'll talk everybody out of everything.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
it's interesting because I've had times where, I'm pig-headed and I need to be left alone. So I will always have my own business and my own way of doing things. It's just how I operate. But there have been times about 20 years ago before I started my current business, web development, and then later on the podcast, where I would go looking and thinking, "Oh God, I've got to get a job." And I don't play well with others. I run with scissors. I'm not going to get your damn coffee. You can get it your own self. That's just all there is to it. And I mean, there were times it's like, oh God, and everybody wanted, given my qualifications and my personality, oh, you'd make a great insurance salesman. No, no, I wouldn't.
Well,
And
there
I
you
turned
go.
all of them down flat. And you know why? Because I don't really believe in what they're telling me. I
Yeah.
can't sell something I am not wholeheartedly behind and trust and believe in. I'm not going to do it ever.
Well, there you go. And one of the people, if we get to it, that I'll talk about this morning is P. Michael Hunt, my financial advisor, who started off in the when I first met him, he was just selling insurance. And then he took over my finances and Warner Earhart of Est, his finances, etc., and has done well by all of us. But he was an insurance salesman, and that's how we got started. And he's made millions of dollars. I personally would not sell insurance for a variety of reasons. Uh, One of them being whole life is a horrible investment, and there's no money in selling term insurance, so which I do believe in. So P. Michael Hunt, with all the same information you had available, went into it, did extremely well. You're doing extremely well in podcasting and so on, and teaching other people the intricacies of the web phenomena and web pages and so on. Uh, so, two different people, same opportunities, different directions. Both of you made a good decision, and I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah. You have to go where your heart is, where you believe. If you don't believe the garbage coming out of your mouth, it's going to trip you up.
Yeah,
But
and
if
I
you wholeheartedly believe it, you're in sales.
there's a, a chapter in the closers part two. I forget where it is, but it's in there somewhere, and it's entitled "Do You Own One?" And the thing was, if you're trying to sell me a Kirby vacuum cleaner, let's swing by your house and show me yours. Let's see if you have one. Now, that doesn't have to apply to everything
By the
because,
way, Ben, it's page 49.
huh?
Page 49.
Oh, okay, super. That doesn't apply to everything because I've sold lots of things I wouldn't buy because I'm not qualified to buy them. But if I'm talking to someone who needs that and I know it works, and I've talked to people who also own one and so on, then I could gleefully sell that item. Oil tankers, I've always, for some bizarre reason, used as an example. I would not be a good prospect, nor a good salesperson for oil tankers. I don't understand them. The sale takes forever to make. It's years and years in committee meetings and so on. I prefer to shake your hand and 30 minutes later we're writing up whatever it is you've bought. So there are exceptions, but I wouldn't sell anything that I didn't believe was good for you, the prospect. And I think that's probably where the dividing line is. Somebody asked me the other day, who wasn't an email necessarily for the show, but in general conversation, they said, "Is there an easy place to figure out what a sales infiltrator is?" He said, "I get the gist of it from listening to you guys, but is there a place where it's all in one place?" On page 267 of the closers part two is a little subhead. So how do you become a sales infiltrator? From the beginning of that chapter on page 257 spells it out, but on 267, how do you become a sales infiltrator, is a great page and a half or so of exactly what we're talking about. So it's not an ethereal concept to you. Sales infiltration is a definable, learnable skill, and mainly it involves getting on the inside of the prospect or the prospective company or what have you. And it also touches on a couple of things. The I made a note right before we got on. I said sales infiltrators rarely lose customers and clients and so on. P. Michael Hunt, who I was mentioning a moment ago, who started off as just my financial advisor. I first met him in 1965. No, that's not true. 1967, when I came to California to run the company, and the cosmetic company, and somebody introduced us. He was warm, likable, fuzzy, trustworthy. I just really liked him from the day we met. I hadn't coined the term yet, and he didn't know it either, but he was a sales infiltrator. Here's the good news for him, and the good news for sales infiltrators: you hardly ever lose a customer. Because if someone has invested money for me and made me tons of money, handle my financial affairs, help bail me out of a couple of bad situations, uh, even infiltrated my family where he helped cure an estrangement with one of my sons. What do you say to me to get me to swap over from P. Michael Hunt to John Doe? There is
Nothing.
nothing, nothing you could say or do, even if you have a better deal or whatever. It's too late. You should have been there in 67 when I needed you. So that's the good news. You don't lose customers that way. The bad news, and I had written that right under it, the bad news is because you're liked and known, liked, trusted, and people feel safe with you and they've turned over their life to you. If you ever betray that trust, it's over. And I mean, it's not, you might have a bad experience with some salesperson you met somewhere or some financial advisor and so on, it didn't work out. If it's handled well, they'll march on and come back after they get through licking their wounds, perhaps give you another chance, perhaps. But if you're a sales infiltrator and you're into my family and business and so on, and I catch you lying, cheating, and stealing, not just that it didn't work out like we'd hoped, but lying, cheating, and stealing, it's over. And I mean over, not a remote chance of it ever coming back together. I've had a couple of people in my life who were such sociable, friendly people. It was over business wise, but after a little while, we continued to socialize because I enjoyed their company. But we did it under the condition, do not ever ask me to invest with you, buy with you, do anything serious. Just tell me funny stories and we'll laugh, have a beer, and go home. But once that trust is broken, it's worse than if you never had the trust. So if you step across the line and become a sales infiltrator, understand there's no going back. Once you're in, you're in. And the good news is, again, you will never lose a customer. And you don't have to fear the competition.
No, you're basically putting forth, whether you recognize it or not, as the person that people really trust. That you are giving them, maybe it's your aura, maybe it's the way you show up, maybe it's how you work with them, but you are giving them trust and they're giving you trust. And that's a
Absolutely.
lifetime guarantee.
Yep.
It should be implied this is a lifetime guarantee.
And like, uh, I was talking to P. Michael the other day. I call him P. Michael. There's a funny story I'll tell you off the air why he goes by P. Michael. You know, he that's on his stationery, and then Hunt is his last name. Uh, but I always call him. Once he swapped over to that, I always call him P. Michael. He's never Mike. He's never Michael. He's P. Michael Hunt. It sounds so official, but he's just a wonderful person who personifies the thing that I've been teaching for 40 years. He is a person you know, like, trust, and with whom you feel safe. And I mentioned in the book, he's mentioned it right around page 267. Uh, he doesn't even have to run ideas by me. He knows where the money is, what it's aimed at doing. He knows what's expendable or in the risk category. It's not, I have no touchy money that you put aside and it's done. It's for Gigi's, after I'm gone, it's for Gigi's uh, uh, security, for lack of a better word. And that's no touchy.
Understood.
P. Michael doesn't go into that because he helped me set it up. He understands the game. But in the money that's still in the game, uh, many times over the years, he said, "Oh, by the way, I sent somebody's so and so much money. I knew you'd like it. If you'd like, I'd send you the details." I said, "Well, drop something in the mail. Let me know what we bought, but I don't need to know the details because he's in the group. He's in the family. He is absolutely trusted." And something just crossed my mind. There's a guy named Mike, not him, Mike, who's now he's in the winery business and doing very well. But he's one of those people does it very well in everything he's in. Gigi decided we needed new blinds, those things that look like Venetian blinds, but they're more serious, wood or plastic or vinyl or whatever. And she thought that would give everything a more official look, and we wouldn't have to mess with it ever again. The cat can't bend them in half and so on. So I called this guy, recommended to me by somebody I trust. I said, if you couldn't get your wife off the blind subject, who would you call? And he gave me a name and number. And he said he's really good. He's absolutely trustworthy. I endorse him. And so that's like getting the National Association of Professional Salespeople seal of approval. The question that answers a whole lot of questions. So the day he came, this is a few years ago, the day he came, he knocked on the door, said, "Hi, I'm Mike," last name, gave me his business card and said, and real friendly, nice looking guy. And one of those people you like automatically because he's worked at it to be likable. He says, "I understand we're thinking about doing some blinds. I got my tape measure here. Send me in the right directions." He didn't ask to sit down, didn't ask for anything, didn't try and sell me on anything. Just let me measure. So we went from room to room to room, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, the office, etc. And we're just zooming along, measuring and so on. Some might call it assumptive selling. But even I, who's taught that for years, didn't feel that way. We asked him to talk about blinds, so we need to know how many blinds and where. When he got finished, I'm making up numbers. I don't know what it was. Let's say it's 25 windows, which is probably not far off. He came back down. We sat in the living room, and he said, "Now, so we got 25 windows. I got all the measurements. I know that. We're down to what would Mrs. Gay like?" He turned away from me. Why bother? He's
Yes.
just the husband.
You don't make any decisions around here, and we know that.
Yeah,
So if
well,
it's in the house, it's the wife's purview.
right. And so I thought to myself, that's good. So Gigi, he said, this is vinyl and gave the advantages. This is real wood, gave the advantages, disadvantages, and so on. And she picked wood. And he said, good, then that means we got to have this finish on it. So we're not back here in 20 years going through this again. And he said, now colors. And she picked out for this room this color and for this room that color and so on. He's making notes. And I'm just sitting there watching in admiration because he was good. He didn't know the term, but he was a sales infiltrator and a very assumptive person. He said, now, you want to get yourself a cup of coffee or something? I'm fine, but I got to do some figuring here because I got 25 windows we got to figure. And so, based on what she had picked and the colors, he's tapping on his computer and making notes. And then he came up and he says, looks up at some point and said, okay, that's fill in the blank dollars. And we can do them. We've got to make them for these windows, but we can do them a week from Thursday, I think he said, or whatever. And so, are we ready to go? Fair enough. And I said, fair enough. Where'd you get that? And he said, I read your book. In the closer.
And he didn't even hit you with that in the beginning. He just
No,
waited for you to ask.
yeah. Where'd you get that? I read your book. So I said, well, this isn't fair. You came in here as a sales infiltrator, didn't tell me, read the books, didn't tell me. And so whatever she wants, she can do it. I'm in. And he wrote it up. We both signed it, and he was gone, beginning to end. A substantial sale, 25 windows, we'll say. And he was gone in less than an hour, maybe way less than an hour. He was a sales infiltrator, a natural, coupled with the fact he read the book and he didn't tell me, which I don't think is fair. Oh, and as he left,
I thought it's brilliant, but I'm a
yeah,
mean girl.
as he left, he said over his shoulder, the house in the back is painted just like this one. I assume that's your guest house. And I said, yeah. He said, well, who lives there? And I said, my mother-in-law. And he said, but you guys own it. And I said, yeah. He says, okay, we'll catch that next time. So as he was getting in his car, I thought, we just bought 2 houses full of blinds. And it was never you got to have this and the sun
All
and
right.
all that stuff you really don't want to listen to. So that, for those listening who's trying to figure out what is sales infiltration, that's it. And thinking of Mike and other people, it reminded me, and I've alluded to this before, but when I was at Macy's in Atlanta, called Davison's back then, a Macy's affiliate in Atlanta, I rose up rather quickly, and I was the assistant buyer of the housewares department, later the buyer in a couple of departments, but first position where I had to wear a suit and a little white flower was assistant buyer of the housewares department. I was just barely out of high school. I didn't know what a housewares department was, but because I had a good personality, came early, stayed late, and so on, they figured I was trainable. and they moved me up rather quickly. Now I'm buying cookware, which, except for eating food that came out of a pot, I didn't know anything about. And I'm the assigned to, under my duties, is being the cookware guy. So Dick DeFano, uh, he's the guy who created the term "things go better with Coke." And the reason he did was he was selling Coca-Cola on selling popcorn, Miro aluminum popcorn poppers makers. And they said, well, how would we sell that? And he went away, I guess, for lunch, came back and said, things go better with Coke. Therefore, get a popcorn popper so you have something to go better with Coke. And so in one of our maybe first or second meeting, Dick said to me, uh, are you sort of fatherly? He wasn't that much older than I was, probably 10 or 12 years older. He leaned over and I think mentally he put his hand on top of mine, but mentally he did, if not physically. And he said, are you scared? And I said, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm running this big department. And he said, well, I'm going to take a big burden off of you. Let me run the cookware department, all brands, not just Miro, all brands. I'll tell you what to buy, and I'll get the other salespeople, the guy with Farberware and the guy with Revereware and so on. I'll get the other people to agree to this. We will pick out what you need, and anything that doesn't sell or that we accidentally overstock you on, we will take it back without a restocking fee or anything. We'll take it back and we will make you look like $1 million while you learn the business. I said, deal. I'm in. And he saved me. I went on to a rather sparkling 5-year career with Macy's, and it was all due to, they have pretty good training at Macy's in those days, but it was all due to a sales infiltrator, although neither one of us knew the name, named Dick DeFano with Miro Aluminum, who saw that I was in over my head and saved me. And again, if somebody came to me with the XYZ cookware or uh, cookware of any kind, flippers, uh, Teflon fry pans when they came along, and so on, I'd say, well, tell me what you got, and then I'll run it by my associate. My associate was Dick DeFano, who was a salesman who called on me.
Oh, goodness.
And I used that a few times over the years when I became an independent sales rep and started traveling around again. I didn't know the name, but I tried to become a sales infiltrator. Hi, it's good news. I'm here. The cavalry has arrived. You're
Right.
safe. And in those small areas that I know something about, you can trust me. But I learned that from the generations before me, and as you and I have discussed many times, watching Jimmy Rucker work. And he didn't know he was, but he was, to me, the first sales infiltrator I ever met. Excuse me, here's another one. At my father's funeral, George Alterman, dad was a food broker. George Alterman, who was head of the biggest grocery chain in the Southeast at the time, Big Apple stores. I don't know if they're still in business or not, owned by Alterman Brothers. George Alterman came up to me at the funeral, casket sitting there, lids up, and there's dad. And he had something in his hand. And I said, hi, Mr. Alterman, what's that? And he said, I want to know if I can put it in the coffin with your father. And I said, certainly. I didn't know what it was, but it meant something to him. I said, but you'll have to find room between all the golf balls and putters and so on that his buddies from the club have put in there. But yeah, I said, what is it? He said, it's the order pad of Alterman Brothers. Your father was the first and last man to ever have the power of the pen. And I said, what is the power of the pen? He said, your dad called on me every Wednesday and we had lunch, but that was a social courtesy to make sure we didn't lose contact. He could sit in his office and write up any order for any product at any time in any quantity. and tell me about it later. And he said, I'm talking about products I'd never, Hunt's, we sold Hunt's ketchup. He said Hunt's ketchup was almost automatic, just keep the shelves full. But when he came up with something new, like saran wrap, Dad was the first person to sell that. He said when he comes up with something new, he can just write up the order. He doesn't have to come see me. He doesn't have to buy me lunch. He has the power of the pen. The first and last person. George Alderman didn't know the term sales infiltrator, but apparently my father was one. So if you're listening to this, that's what you should be aspiring to get into that position where you're the go-to person, where you're known, liked, trusted, and people feel safe with you. And then make sure, so you don't ever violate that privilege, that you're selling quality products that are competitively priced and that you're spending your day talking to people qualified to buy it. If you ever start selling oil tankers, don't call on me. I don't want one. But there's lots of other things you may sell over the years that I would want. So put me in your hopper and earn my trust.
Listen, my favorite page in this entire book is page 269, and I've got it open in front of me. And this poor thing, it's been falling out of the book for weeks now. But we're talking about, you know, one of the things that you mentioned is, you want to be a person who others brag about, knowing a person who is capable of making others feel better about themselves
Mm-hmm.
just by being around you. You just described you, your dad, P. Michael Hunt. I mean, you've got people like that around you, an open, honest, and caring person. And then it goes on a little further. The best part is a person who communicates clearly, effectively, and lovingly. And the next question is, aren't these all God given talents that some have and others don't? And you said that yes, in the beginning, it's true. And while you were talking, I always write down notes while we're chatting. And I wrote down training versus skill because you're teaching all of this stuff with these books and with the conversations that you and I are having every Wednesday. But to me, and listen, everybody, I'm going to nag at you a little bit. Get the closers part two. If you have to, bypass closers part one, and we will get to that down the road. But get part two and go to page 269 and then work your way back to the beginning. I'm just telling you, I'm ordering you what to do. Go get the book, go to page 269 and work your way back. But training is one thing. People say, oh, we can train you, we can get you to do this. But if you don't have the skill that goes with that training, I don't know. You have to have both, I think.
Yeah, but both are learnable. There are, as that chapter and those pages talk about, there are people, when I was a lifeguard and teaching swimming lessons to those bratty little cowards, I had them when they'd never been in a swimming pool before.
I'm
The
laughing because I really don't like children very much. So it's not that I dislike them. I really don't like their parents for the most part, but
yeah,
it's like,
that's where it came from.
yeah.
As one of our friends, we were having dinner one night in a restaurant, and some little guy, they weren't being obnoxious, but they were walking around the restaurant and giggling and so on, where perhaps they should be learning how to sit at the table of the people that brought them there. But as our friend Audrey, who's a bit of a sarcastic, she makes me look like I'm not sarcastic. She said she looked down at the kid the second time he came up to the table, and she pointed to the parents' table and said, "Go be cute over there."
I've done something similar. I
I
keep
said,
waiting
"God."
to be arrested for thumping somebody's kid by accident. If it was an accident, but I try
How
to
would
stay
how would I
around.
know her face would be in the way of my backhand?
Yeah, sorry about that. Did that hurt?
Anyway, it is trainable. Uh, I've told this before to you. We got up one day in the early days of my starting to rise up in Holiday Magic Cosmetics, and we'd come out to Santa Fe for training. And I forgot, and we got up one day and did something in front of the video uh, Betamax recorder, which was a breakthrough. I didn't think I'd ever be on television, and there it was in a box, and I was on. So I got up and did my little presentation, whatever it was I was supposed to do, and Zig got up and did his, and Bill Dempsey and some of
If
the
you're
other
new
people.
to us, he's talking about Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, yeah. Zig and I joined the same business on the same day in Atlanta and came along, and then I loved to say to Zig, who was 18 years older than I am and was, yes, Zig Ziglar, of course I know him. He works for me. But in these days, he didn't work for me. We were equal in the company we joined and we're just starting to rise up in. So anyway, we're supposed to be back in the back in various offices memorizing our scripts, and I'd forgotten my manual. And I was voted wittiest in my senior class in college, but that doesn't get you any jobs. It just means you can be funny at times and get around with folks. But as soon as you put 50 people in front of me, I froze up because I'd never been in front of 50 people. So who were paying attention to me. So I go back to get the manual, and William Penpatrick, the owner of the company, one of my early mentors, and Fred Pape, the current president of the company at that time, had their backs to me, and they were looking at the monitor on the Betamax video player, whatever you called it. And they happened to be watching my video. I guess they were watching all of them, but I heard my voice. And Fred Pape said, "He's good." And I thought, I am? Wow. And William Penpatrick said, "I will pay more for the ability to effectively communicate than any other skill." And I went from this is something you do, you get up at night and talk in front of a bunch of people and hope everything works out, to a dead serious student of communications, script learning, script perfecting, and I started taking selling serious. It wasn't just something I drifted into because I happened to see an ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now I was serious because the guy who, to a large degree, controlled my immediate future said, "I will pay more for the ability to effectively communicate than any other skill." So I went from not being a speaker to being a speaker rapidly. And I told you this, Zig Ziglar had been at it. He'd been selling cookware and doing pretty well, but he'd never made the kind of money we were both about to make. And, but he was good in front of a room. He was like a lounge act. Uh, Whether was a hardcore closer or not is debatable, but he would charm you into buying things or warm you up where you could turn to your prospect, thanks to Zig, and you could sign him up. He was that type of guy and far better on the stage than I was. So I said to Zig, he used to carry around this water pump because part of his main speech was called Biscuits, Fleas, and Pump Handles. Fleas you could put in a jar and they bang their head and they quit jumping that high. So that's what happens to most people, Zig would say. Biscuits, he'd tell a story about a cook when he was growing up in South Carolina who fixed the most marvelous biscuits. And one day, uh, the biscuits were hard and not up to her standards. And Zig said, "Ms., whatever her name was, what happened to the biscuits?" She said, "Well, Mr. Zig, they squatted to rise, but they got cooked in the squat. And that's what happens to most people." He would say, "You get cooked in the squat." And the water thing was you got to prime the pump and stay with it till the water comes out. And he would pump and pump and pump. And I think, well, it weighed 50 pounds, I'm guessing. And I didn't think he should be seen dragging it in and out. It'd be like watching Elvis unpack his guitar from the bus. You're not supposed to see that part of the act. So I said to Zig, "Here's the deal. Let me go and be with you at any seminar speech I can. I'll carry the pump. I'll set it up. All I ask to do is sit in the front row, take notes, and have a meal with you that I'll pay for where I can ask you questions." He said, "Deal." So I carried that stupid pump into, I'm guessing, 50 or 60 meetings, but I watched him and I slowly figured out this is a learnable skill. I already had the Southern accent. Most of it's gone now, but I had the Southern accent. I was a Southerner by nature, so I'm a storyteller by nature. All I had to do was learn how to present it professionally and predictably. And that includes being a sales infiltrator.
You're not an
So,
actor. You have to be comfortable with what you're saying.
right. Yep,
We're
exactly.
not, what is that idiot fake Cajun that neither one of us could stand? Justin Wilson.
Yeah.
What a fake. Okay, I'm done. You keep going.
Easy. You got to get over Justin. He's been dead for years.
I don't care. He just, he bothered me.
And he had that blind dog from next
Oh
door.
no, he stole that dog. Okay, keep going.
Well, anyway, it was a learnable skill, trainable, and I slowly got better and better and better at it until selling products was almost a sideline. I make more money selling products from the stage, uh, having given the talk, than I do giving the talk. However, uh, I'm a good old Southern boy. Pay me $15,000 to talk for 60 minutes or so, and the right to sell my stuff. I'm in. I'm not so far away from my beginnings that I don't take that seriously. And it's all 100% a learned skill. I had a little personality go with it. My family didn't put up with slackers, so I knew to come early, stay late, and work on weekends. But that'll only get you so far. I had to get good at what I did. So although it wasn't named yet, I became, by training, a sales infiltrator, a professional speaker, an excellent salesperson, and a trainer of other people. And that's where the money and success and some degree of fame all came from. And it's all 100% learnable. How? I wrote it down. It's in the closers part one, it's in the closers part three and two and three and five. All those people learn from me. And the reason I'm looking forward to part four is although you have made me a successful podcaster, I didn't do it. I didn't know anything about it. You did, and that's what your book's going to be about. And I can't wait. So, as Earl Nightingale used to say, Ben, it's all written down. Everything you want to know is written down, and it's in the libraries. And now he said that just as cassette tapes were coming out, he was selling his stuff on records, 33 and a third RPM records. So now you can sit at your computer and for free in 2 or 3 days learn what it took me 20, 30 years to learn, a lot of it for free. The only thing you have to do there is check your references. There are a lot of people teaching a lot of things who I know. I've been at this long enough to who's who, what's what, and where the bodies are buried. Check your references because there are people teaching, for instance, we're talking about selling. There are people teaching selling who've never sold anything in their lives successfully other than their teaching on the internet or speaking from the front of the room. And if they know what they're talking about, that's great. J. Douglas Edwards, I wrote his book, Sales Closing Power, for him after he died. That's also at the website, by the way, that I sent people to earlier. Um, I got to know him. He worked for me. I started researching. Apparently, he had some experience in the insurance business, but from the stage, he would tell you to do things that you weren't going to do. You know, most sales are made after the 15th attempt to close. Well, if that were true, there would be no sales made because 90% of all salespeople, I just made up a statistic, don't ask for the order the first time. If it requires 15
Say that
asks,
again. You didn't ask for the order. I had to learn that early on because I'm a web developer. It's really what I do in my day-to-day business. Podcasting is a passion project for me. I love what I do, but it's not my business yet. It's going to
right,
become a very important part of my business, particularly once the book is published. But Here's the thing, I learned very quickly if I wanted to feed my family, meaning Hamilton is an ass and his brother Silas the good, if I wanted to feed my family, I didn't have time to do a lot of talking and a lot of consulting with potential clients. I explained what they needed after they told me what they wanted, and I tore that apart because it's never the same thing. It's just, I'm telling you, it's not.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't go to a web developer and say, I want to do what they're doing. No, you don't. And if you insist on it, I'm going to refer you to somebody else. But I would find that in about 45 minutes, if I didn't have the guts to say, if I wanted to work with them, that's important. Not always did I want to work with them. How do you want to do this? Where do you want to start? And they go, now, right now, because they're ready. You don't
Yep,
wait 10 times. You'll starve to death.
absolutely. And so, as Earl said, it's all written down, it's all there. He also said, though, if you have a great secret, put it in a book, put a copy of the book in every library on earth in the local language, and your secret is safe. In other words, he knew that
Right.
the vast majority of people, although what they're seeking is all written down somewhere in some form, and now with a computer easy to find,
Oh, so
they,
easy.
yeah, they still wouldn't do it.
Once they start reading these books, or if they've already had them on their shelf and they're going back and going, huh, I must have missed that part. I do. Listen, I've had these books for years. Seriously, this poor book is coming apart. I actually just ordered some book tape to put it all back together. But I'm in this book all the time. I've read it, never in one go. But when I need it, I can pick that book up and go, huh, and I'll just kind of let it open on its own. And oh, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah,
When the,
you need to
when
read.
when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But most people don't get ready. They come up with excuses not to do it
Yeah.
this way, not to do it that way, etc. So I'm saying to all of our listeners what Dr. Hill used to say to me. He had two things he hammered into me when we first started working together. One that I still rings in my ears because I still get distracted easily was focus, Ben, focus. And the other one was take action, sometimes followed by, for God's sake, take action. You know,
And the other
which,
one, it was write it down, Ben. So there's
oh, yeah,
actually
write
three.
it down. Yeah, don't worry, I won't forget it. Yes, you will. Write it down.
It's crazy. My friend, our friend, David Brown, we're
Mm,
doing a third podcast. Well, you're my third one, so I'm actually doing four. We have another one that doesn't really have anything to do with what you and I are talking about, but it's called Coffee and Podcasts, quick sips of success, because people really, they want to podcast. They do badly. There's too much information out there. People make it either really hard to do or they give you crap advice. So we're putting together 15-minute little snippets. They show up every Thursday. And I'm telling you, it's amazing to me what people don't know about what they don't know. They don't know what to ask. So sometimes you
and
have to
they're
get
afraid
out.
to ask.
If that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
we do the same thing that you and I do. Ask us questions. We're here to help. If we don't know the answers, which is highly unlikely, yeah, I'm just so modest and humble. But if we don't know the answer, we're going to sure find it for you.
Yeah, that's right. And there's no shame in not knowing. One time we were talking about something. I think Dr. Hill was in my office and somebody asked me something and I came up with an answer. And if I had been his age with his experience, I wasn't either. Uh, I probably would have spotted that as nonsense. I was just filling the air with something rather than say, I don't know. I hadn't yet learned how to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And so anyway, when whoever it was left, Dr. Hill said, Ben, you and I put together do not know 99.999999999 of the facts available to us. Therefore, don't ever be embarrassed or ashamed to say, I don't know, dash, but I'll find out. And
Right.
that freed me up from all sort. It was hard walking around, Denise, having to know everything on earth. That was really difficult.
Mhm. Yeah. Been there, done it. It's like, oh, look, I can answer that. Oh, geez, Denise, really? It's like, what gobbledygook just came out? Can you take it back? No, you already said it.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. But you're right. And the thing, we all have so much to learn and relearn. That's where I find myself a lot. I've read this. I already know this. No, no, you don't. Because the last time I might have read it, I was in a different spot. I had a
Right.
different bias. I had a different, frame of mind, or I was just cranky. Who knows? But if I read it at the right time, like, oh, there it is. And I do that every time I come to page 269. There it is. It's always there
It
when I
doesn't
need.
move around once we print the
No.
books.
Well, it does
They,
if you don't tape it back down. But yeah, you're right.
when you're taping your book back together, get the pages in order. You remember when I got what is now called the Closers Part One. When I first bought it, I didn't write the first horrible version of it. I rewrote it and turned it into the bestseller of all time. But when I got it out of the envelope and fanned through it like you do with any new book, pages shot all over the office. And then those that stayed in the book were not necessarily in numerical order, and some had been bound in upside down. So don't tell me your book has fallen apart. My first copy of the closers fell apart before I got it.
But my book is falling apart. But I'll quit whining about it. How's
Yeah,
that?
would
Deal?
you?
Is a deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
but see, the problem is I obviously should say I'll send you a replacement, but you don't want to give up that one. It's got notes in it and dog ears and all sorts of
Yeah.
things.
My fingerprints and tears are all over it.
Hmm.
Seriously. Well, we are out of time. I don't know how this happens, but we're going to be back in this particular chapter for a while. I mean, we've got probably 2 or 3 more weeks or longer because it's a very important chapter. So I'm thinking we'll start, 216, go back and touch on 269 and pick up on 270. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right. Any last thoughts, Ben?
No, other than I ask you to do what Dr. Hill asked me to do, folks, take action. Yeah, I'm not trying to sell books. I've sold millions of them. I'll get along fine if you never order one. But for your good, if you're in selling, personal development, marketing, get the books or get one and start out. Probably the Closers Part Two would be the best. It's a little less shocking. Closers Part One is politically incorrect in places. It's accurate, but it's politically incorrect and a little tougher than some people uh, find comfortable. I admit that. But it's the best selling book on selling ever written, most popular, most powerful, best selling ever. So there's something to be said for it. But get either one of them and get deeper involved in the family. Or I hope I'm not run over the little time we have left. Or uh, pick somebody's system. Zig and I were talking one day in a meeting. I think we both spoke, and somebody came, well, which of your systems should I follow? And I think it was me, if not, it was Zig. One of us said, either one. It doesn't make any difference. Start, pick a system, learn it, stay with it, then get the other one and refine what you learned in the first one and so on. But get started. It's everything you need to know to be successful in this business, in any business, has been written down and is available to you.
Big secrets about Napoleon Hill. That's who we're talking about when he says Dr. Hill. Dr. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's all stated in there. Take action. How many times did he say it? And
Uh,
people are still trying
somebody,
to dissect, I don't know
yeah,
what the secret is.
yeah.
Take action, you morons. So I'll say it.
Somebody's documented it. I'm not that quite that anal, but action is mentioned. I don't know what it is, 220 times in Think and Grow Rich. You'd think people reading it might go, Huh. I wonder if that action thing has anything to do with it.
In the title that screws up people. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah,
think.
Think and Grow Rich, it's right there. But yeah, I have that book. I've read it. Oh, I read it in its entirety from start to finish. I don't pick it up and, put it down. I will read it or I'll listen to it on Audible twice a year. It's just part of how I operate.
Yep.
Now, the closers, they're handy. I mean, I'm constantly picking, well, part two anyway, picking that up. But anyway, we are going to run out of time, and I think we've shared how to find us. We're easy to locate. Just look for us online. Denise Griffitts, Bengay the Third, your partner in Success Radio, the Closers Inner Circle podcast. You can't throw a stick on the internet without hitting one or both of us. So come find us. We are here to help you as best as we can. So, Ben, thank you. Oh, and by the way, thank you for not mentioning that I was cursing at my cat in the green room because I said,
Yeah, I was
yeah,
thinking about mentioning that.
I knew you were, so I thought I'd get out in front. The first thing you hear me say is, "Da-da-da-da," and you knew you knew which cat it was, or didn't you have to explain who it was? So, but anyway, I'm sorry that you had to hear that horrible word come out of my delicate mouth.
I'm gonna go see my psychiatrist today.
I don't, yeah, you told Gigi what I said, and she laughed too. So no, you're not. So, anyway, it's been one of those weeks, I'm telling you. But it was a bad word. And my poor cat is probably sitting in a corner going, she doesn't love me no more. No, he's not. He's out there looking for trouble. But anyway, thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. Ben, thank you. I love you. Tell Gigi hi.
Love you, dude. Take care.
Okay, bye.